Hello, friends. So, we are currently in the pulse of the 19th gene key. It is called the future human being, and its shadow is codependence. The gift is sensitivity, and the Siddhi sacrifice. So, I will read this to you. I hope you enjoy. This is the dogs in the background play fighting on this beautiful day. The 19th shadow, codependence, the great change. Along with the 49 and the 55th shadow, the 19th shadow is perhaps the most topical shadow of our current age. We are living through a time of unprecedented global mutation. This mutation is on many different levels, from the most physical to the most spiritual. To truly capture the essence of what is occurring to humanity, one needs to look not so much at the spiritual dimension, but at the opposite of the spectrum, the biogenetic. The mind of man is steeped in causality. As long as we recognize a cause, we believe there is a purpose. If you are a geneticist, everything you look at appears to serve the purpose of the evolution of life, whereas if you are a mystic, everything serves the purpose of the evolution of consciousness. For millennia, humanity has tried to understand the purpose of life from the spiritual dimension, but until fairly recently, we have not had the ability to understand the purpose of life from the material dimension. With the advent of genetics, we are beginning to see the microprocesses that drive evolution itself. A scientist might say that man's spiritual evolution comes about as a result of his biological evolution. The mystics tend to see it the opposite way around. What is fascinating about the scientific view is that it focuses on the lower frequency realms, the realms of the matter. The 19th shadow represents an aspect of our genome that is currently undergoing an intense mutation. A mutation is a spontaneous and usually sudden quantum leap from one state to another. In genetics, mutations are often the mistakes that happen when genes copy one another. Such mistakes can lead to fascinating new chemical combinations, which can in turn lead to the evolution of entirely new forms. The 19th shadow of codependence has its roots deep within our tribal ancestral past. Codependence refers to the state of consciousness below independence. To be independent means to truly rely upon yourself, whereas to be codependent means to rely on outside agencies. As primitives, we primarily relied upon nature for our survival, and because we relied upon an outside agency, we anthropomorphized it. Anthropomorphized, that's a new word. In other words, we created gods to represent that agency. Yes, the mind just makes up all these images, right? It's helping us. Thus, it is out of the 19th shadow that all the world religions have been born. Wow. Our relationship with God, or a set of gods, is a purely codependent relationship because it is based on this need for outside authority. It is here in the 19th gene key that one of the great human stories is coded, the story of our relationship to God. As long as man believes in a God outside himself, the frequency of our planet will remain at the level of the 19th shadow. The vibration of human suffering depends upon the existence of a separate authority of a higher frequency than us. Ooh. This last sentence is the ultimate definition of what it means to be a victim, which is what characterizes the shadow frequency, codependency. The programming partner to the 19th shadow is the 33rd shadow of forgetting. In creating a God out there, we have forgotten the power that lies dormant within us. The ultimate reliance we have outside ourselves is on food. God has always been about food, and food has always been about territory. Food production was based upon tribal territory, which is why the different nations and cultures developed in the first place. But today, at least in the developed world, food no longer has to come from our own tribe. It can flow in from anywhere in the world. For one thing, our dietary needs are changing as we learn to manipulate our environment with greater efficiency. Through sciences such as nuclear physics and genetics, humanity is beginning to play God more and more, and is thus moving from a state of codependence to a state of independence. Because we can now outwit the gods with modern technology, we no longer need them as much. The more advanced the society, the deeper the question God as an outside agency. The deeper we question God as an outside agency. However, Baba, ¿qué pasó? Ja, fein. Aufhören, okay? Gracias. However, the 19th shadow is currently undergoing a huge genetic mutation, which means that man's reliance on religion is also undergoing a transformation. The old tribal fears of not having enough are dying, and with them the great religions. The breaking of such a deep-seated and ancient codependent relationship has powerful repercussions for our world. The old ways must die to the new. Such is the purpose of mutation, and the process is one of destruction. Only as the dust finally settles will the new creation become fully realized. The reason all of this can seem so terrifying is that it represents a fork in our evolutionary development in which an entirely new path is opening. A path in which human beings will have to leave behind the old tribal codependent ways. The whole world is dividing into those who are becoming more independent and those who cling to the comfort of the old ways. In a global level, we are beginning to see this made manifest now in the battle between globalization and factionalism, and between science and religion. For us as individuals, the transformation of the 19th shadow will see its deepest manifestation in our relationships. The old-style codependent relationships of the working husband and the housebound wife are giving way to a new level of independence. The liberation of women is changing the infrastructure of our civilization, and children are increasingly cared for collectively so that both mother and father retain a higher level of independence. Whether we like this or not, it is occurring all across the developed world. Our children are growing up as the children of society rather than the children of a single tribal family. Because of the huge genetic shifts taking place across the board, male-female relationships dynamics are more challenging than ever. A great change is coming, and roles are changing to accommodate the birth of a new paradigm. Although it may be a difficult birth, in the not too distant future, the 19th shadow will have disappeared entirely from our world. The contemporary mutation moving through this 19th gene key is having an unprecedented effect on all life on our planet. as a vital aspect of the codon ring of Gaia, along with the 60th and the 61st gene key, it is breaking down the very patterns of the world psyche. The reactive rigidity of the 16th shadow and the psychosis of the 61st shadow have long held sway on our planet. A great reaction is occurring within the chemistry of our DNA, as the old ways appear to tighten their grip on the only reality they have known. There is enormous fear being generated through the shadow of this codon ring, and enormous potential violence as our codependence is broken. However, the truth is that all life, and always has been, interdependent, because all life is one. Even independence is an illusion, and this realization brings an end to the world psychosis that operates out of the 19th shadow low-frequency survival-based reality. It is through this ring of Gaia that we must and will eventually see and will live once again in union with all beings that share this planet Earth. The repressive nature of this shadow aspect is needy. The repressive nature of the 19th shadow emerges as neediness or clinging. These people who cannot let go of the past out of a fear of being alone. This creates catastrophic relationship dynamics based on making other people victims of their need. Repressive natures can be very cunning with the way they transmit their shadow patterns. These people will very likely use subtle tools such as guilt to get their own needs met. They need to feel needed, and they will act out all kinds of dramas, often totally unconsciously, to get the attention they crave. They are masters of negative attention, drawing other people's energy towards them without caring what expression it takes. Even violence is a form of attention. The only way to break out of such pattern is to move into independence. The reactive nature is isolated. The angry expression of this gene key is isolationist. These people refuse any attention, loudly proclaiming that they don't need anyone. Such a nature only pretends to be independent, while beneath the surface they seethe with rage. Of course, people that isolate themselves like this always take great care to do it right before everybody else's eyes. They make a point of showing you how alone they are, craving the attention it brings them, and becoming even more embittered when others leave them alone. Ironically, when others do try to support them or offer them friendship, they usually explode, projecting all their pent-up anger onto the other person. As it is easy to see how the repressive and the reactive nature together create the perfect dynamic of the typical dysfunctional codependent relationship. The 90th gift, sensitivity. The whisperers. The gift of sensitivity is about being highly attuned to the needs of others. In order to be able to sense others and their needs, you must first become independent from them, which is what this 90th gift is about. The moment you reach the frequency of independence, your natural energy becomes apparent. This 19th gift is also a gift of touch. It does not have to be liberal touch, although it can be. Many of these people are gifted healers or therapists. It is more than just a physical sense of touch, but the touch with people as well as animals. As we learned from this shadow, this gene key is rooted in material needs. And when you elevate the frequency from your own need, you suddenly become aware of the needs of everything and everyone around you. This makes the 90th gift a great environmental barometer. There is a rare phenomenon in human beings known as synesthesia. Synesthesia. is the genetic ability to link different senses internally. For example, to smell with your eyes or sense colors with your hands. It is actually deeply connected to the 90th gift and can often be activated when a higher frequency passes through this gene key. Synesthesia is a byproduct of increased sensitivity to your sensory environment. If this 90th gift is an aspect of your hologenetic profile, then it is highly possible that you may discover latent abilities that allow you to feel deeply into your environment, and in particular to sense the emotional patterns and needs of others through the living auric field. Many artists and healers have these kinds of gifts and can sense the hidden higher energy fields through their fingers or through their skin or hair. Sensing these fields in nature allows you to see a completely different world from most people, a world of energy fluctuations, intense colors, moods, and internal pressure patterns. In the deepest sense, the higher frequencies of the 90th gene key have access to the realms of magic. We may recall that the 90th shadow finds its basis in the human dependence on external food. The 90th gift simply shifts this perspective to a higher level. At a higher frequency, food is really life energy, or what the ancients called prana or chi. This gift allows you increased sensitivity to this living bioenergy that connects all creatures. When your heart and being opens to sense the abundance of this energy throughout nature, you become for the first time emotionally independent. Only the activation of the love inside your DNA gives you this wider sense of being. Furthermore, because this 90th gene key is one of the first places in the human genome where the great change is having an immediate impact, the movement from codependence to independence is something we see increasingly throughout our human cultures. In its early stages, it is not an easy passage. Suddenly having increased sensitivity to your environment makes you more aware than ever of your old tendencies towards codependence. Even though you may have opened your heart to the great change, most of the world still has not done so, which puts you in a position of great responsibility, not to mention discomfort. We are seeing such responses to the great change all across our culture today as human beings become more aware of how much damage our codependence is doing to our environment. The 19th gene key is a genetic portal to the unconscious and particularly into the collective unconscious. Interestingly, this gift seems to have strong activation in cultures that live close to nature, such as indigenous cultures. In such tribal groups, there has always been an increased sensitivities to those regions that are beyond the five senses. What modern humans often interpret as naivety, in such cultures it is in fact a heightened genetic sensitivity to the quantum reality of the unconscious. As this gene key reawakens in humanity, we see changes in our dream life, and through this portal we can reconnect with our ancient sense of the magic that comes through dreams. People with the 19th gift are often shamans because their increased sensitivity to other worlds and other realms. The 19th gene key is one of the three primary portals that allow humanity access to other evolutionary kingdoms within nature. These kingdoms, which have often been referred to as the angelic or devic realms, are planes of consciousness that follow a similar evolutionary pattern to humanity, but in parallel dimensions. Okay, it's getting really hot. So, give me a second. I was supposed to go horse riding today, so I'm still wearing my horse riding stuff, but eventually it didn't happen for good reasons. Baba, Baba, taking my jumper. Okay, so where are we? Yes. So, similar evolutionary patterns to humanity, but in parallel universes. Dimensions, sorry. The 19th G key behaves like a genetic marker in human DNA, and only when you hit a certain genetic frequency does that marker activate the portal, allowing information to cross clearly between these parallel worlds. Certain human beings have always been credited, or indeed discredited, with the ability to see fairies or hear voices of spirits or angels. This is a genetic ability that comes specifically through the 19th gift. Of course, the 19th shadow also has its low frequency counterparts, which can cause human beings to tune into the lower subterranean kingdoms, often known as the demon realm. As a matter of fact, most human beings are directly influenced by these parallel evolutions, whether they realize it or not. Only a higher, virtuous frequency allows you to become independent of these shadow forces, which otherwise will pull you again and again into lower frequency patterns and emotional states. The 19th gift has a particularly powerful link with the mammal kingdom, because it acts as a portal between the unconscious and the conscious realm. Those who know how to use this portal can access information from other realms apart from the human. Since this gene key has evolved from humanity's relationship to food, it also evolved out of our relationship to nature, since traditionally we killed animals for food, especially mammals. This ancient sacrificial relationship between humans and animals is actually based upon a timeless, sacred pact between the two species. Those with sensitivity will know the future destiny of this cross-species contract. Most tribal cultures contain legends of a time when animals and humans were a single consciousness, and in the future, this is our eventual destiny. To once again enter the collective quantum field where both humans and animals coexist. In this ancient connection to our DNA between other mammals and humans, that is the origin of the whisperer. Specially gifted people who can communicate with animals, who can act as a bridge between entirely different species. Such people can tune into the ancestral gene pools of certain species and often feel a profound connection to nature at a deeper level than ordinary people. In tribal societies, the shaman's specific skill was to bridge the ancestral spirit behind the tribe to the individuals within the tribe. This is a direct reflection of the function of the 19th gift. People with these gifts have always been humanity's natural interpreters of other realms. Their increased awareness of the energetic pathways and portals between all realms, material, emotional, mental, and divine, mark them as pioneers and initiators into these magic realms. In today's world, people with the 19th gift are likely to use their sensitivity in any field where people are working together in groups. Their ability to unconsciously sense the needs of others means that they are often seen as psychic. However, they can also be very grounded in the reality of the needs of the material plane. For example, they can use their heightened sensitivity to bring balance to the spheres of money, work, and relationships. In fact, Their very presence brings focus to these kinds of issues. This gift truly spans all realms, and its future function, as we shall see, is to collapse the barriers that separate them, thus fusing together the ancient magical realms with the modern material plane. The 19th Siddhi, sacrifice. The fifth initiation, the Annunciation. It's rather hot here, but I'm enjoying this. This is also my, or not also, but this is actually, I have this in my evolution. So it's good to read it again and again. And as I'm reading it to you, I get definitely different insights, you know, how the mind plays these things. Just do that. Okay. So, the path of frequency through the 19th gift goes from codependence to independence and finally to interdependence. Interdependence represents a quantum leap beyond the other two, and its realization is the future destiny of our species. In many ways, it is the 19th shadow of codependence that contains the seed of the 19th Siddhi of sacrifice. In a codependent relationship, both partners have sacrificed a part of their true selves to the relationship, and the resulting lack of synthesis they feel drives the negative patterns of the relationship. In a relationship that is truly interdependent, both partners also sacrifice their sense of individuality into a higher version of their divinity, holding nothing back for themselves at all. The true meaning of interdependence is about entering into a state of union with all beings in the cosmos, which involves the death of the separate self. This kind of sacrifice can only occur when you give your heart unconditionally to another. Instead of dying, you are actually reborn as a higher dimensional being. In surrendering your smaller self, you attain realization of your greater self. Through the 19th gene key, you can see how each level of frequency has to transcend itself entirely. Once humans overcome their codependence on outside agencies, they finally achieve independence. Likewise, once they attain independence, they have to take another great leap to give up their hard-earned independence and trust in the totality itself. This surrender to the collective structure involves sacrifice at the highest level of the word's meaning. This is the sacrifice of your separate identity, and perhaps far more frightening for the separate self, it is the sacrifice of your body. The 19th Siddhi shares a profound connection with the 49th Siddhi of rebirth. These two Siddhis represent the key mystical process that will eventually overtake human species. Great secrets are held within the world's great myths, and here we can see the myth of sacrifice. The Norse Odin hanging upside down on the world tree, or Christ hanging on the cross. All sacrificial myths lead to a rebirth, and all such myths are anthropomorphisms of deep genetic secrets hidden within human DNA. As we have seen, this 19th gene key has a deep connection with the animal kingdoms. Humanity has evolved out of the animal realm. We are the result of a series of genetic mutations that took place in primates and finally led to the creation of a new species, Homo sapiens. Through this 19th Siddhi, you can see how consciousness has traveled through form after form, each time creating a more complex form in order to house a higher frequency than the previous one. At every level within this chain, the higher form has lived off the form below, has lived off the form below it in order to keep evolving. Life is thus a living chain of sacrifice. Earth is really the breeding ground for a species of genetic leaps that parallel the awakening of our full spiritual realization. The breeding ground for a series of genetic leaps that parallel the awakening of our full spiritual realization. Boom! Our awareness is like a series of Russian dolls. As we make each leap in awareness, we come to realize we are housed within a wider framework than we had previously understood. There are a total of 9 dimensions that our Earth has to move through, and as we pass through each of these initiations, we have to sacrifice our smaller local self before finally being born as a true universal human being. Consciousness is now beginning to outstrip man and is reaching out for a higher form. But the new form must emerge out of the old one, so deep within human DNA, new mutations are being triggered. This is one of the main reasons for the vast population explosion on the planet. Our genes require the maximum diversity in order to trigger a genetic mutation potent enough to reshape Homo sapiens into something quite different. It is also the reason why so many new diseases are emerging through our DNA. They are all early mutations, precursors of what is to follow. Through the 19th Siddhi, through the 19th Siddhi, it is not only the individual that must sacrifice him or herself to the whole, but also the whole human species that must be sacrificed. Everything we see happening in the world around us, from pollution to global warming to wars and social upheaval, is a result of the profound genetic process we are undergoing. For those with the 19th Siddhi, the focus is always on the future needs of humanity rather than the current needs. These people understand what is to come as well as what we must go through. Such people stand alone as heralds of a future consciousness, and their lives are a magnificent example of sacrifice to that consciousness. They emerge during times of great mutation, since they themselves are in the grip of that mutation. With their hypersensitive mutated DNA, they see the new form emerging and do their utmost to prepare people for the coming consciousness shift. They are highly sensitized bridges to the new human and have the ability to siphon information about the new paradigm from behind the veil of the future into the present. Every city has to make its sacrifice in this way, because each of them represents a being from the future that works in the present. The 19th Siddhi contains the secrets of mystical initiation. Every aspect of the Earth's consciousness must move through the 9 portals of initiation before our collective planetary evolution comes to an end. Each of these initiations is explored in more depth within the 22nd gene key. The 9 portals of planetary initiation: birth, baptism, confirmation, matrimony, annunciation, communion, ordination, sanctification, glorification. Each initiation brings us into a wider awareness of our interdependence with the whole. When the 19th Siddhi manifests in form, then a great being makes an individual sacrifice on behalf of the whole. This is the mystery and hidden meaning of the life of Christ. Through an individual sacrifice, The 19th Siddhi allows the entire collective to pass through a group initiation. We can now see how the Christian rites hold these codes of the great initiations, even though they have been effectively frozen into structures that have little or nothing to do with the initiation themselves, which occur organically and usually over the course of many incarnations. Jeez. The ring of Gaia, then, of which this gene key is a vital aspect, connects all earth beings on the same initiation journey. As the ultimate form manifestation of Gaia, humanity stands on the cusp of one of the greatest initiations, the fifth initiation of the Annunciation. Mythically speaking, this great initiation has to do with the conception of a holy child within the body of humanity. Thus, the whole of humanity must sacrifice its independence for a higher vision. This mythical annunciation can only take place through the synarchy, the communion of evolved souls who collectively pioneer this great sacrificial impulse. The 19th Siddhi will be one of the first Siddhis that awakens in man at a collective level. As soon as the great mutation has occurred within humanity and we pass through the fifth initiation, we will see what kind of shift has taken place. One of the traits of the new human will be an incredible sensitivity that is far beyond being psychic. The awareness in such a being will not recognize itself as being separate from other human beings. Thus, they will work for all humanity without caring for themselves. Although we call that sacrifice, it is not so for them, since they will know no other way to live. This 19th Siddhi is a herald of the future forms that will house higher frequencies of consciousness, and as such it displays the great inadequacy of our language. Such as our language has evolved out of our reliance on the five senses, future form will operate through entirely different languages. Current human languages is auditory, but future form will communicate through their environment using a sense that is closer to what we call touch. This is the true language of Gaia, the interconnective auric tissue that brings all beings of the planetary sphere into full awareness of their inherent unity. Get the book, get your free profile, and if you have questions, reach out to me or to other guides, people who've been going with it for some time, or there's a really cool website also where there's so much cool information and it's super accessible and nicely put together. This is a non-paid advertisement. Have a beautiful weekend.